How much faster is the M2 MacBook Air if you upgrade its slow SSDs and you give it a decent amount of RAM? Well, today we will find out because I have two identical models in front of me. Both of these have 8-core graphics, which means it's gonna be a perfectly fair test, whereas some people have put out some benchmarks where you're looking at a 16 gig 512, but it also has the upgraded GPU, which we're now seeing could slow down in certain cases. In some cases it could be faster. This is gonna be perfectly fair. We're not only going to run some benchmarks, we're also gonna run real world tests for productivity as well as multitasking and see how much does the base one slow down and how much performance do you gain with the extra RAM. And at this point, even MKBHD is saying that the base model should not exist. So if you're on a budget and you might wanna buy one, you're already stretching your money really thin, let's see what actually happens. Right out of the gate, we have to start out with a Blackmagic SSD speed test. We know that the base model has that one NAND chip instead of two like Apple used before. And as you guys can see, it's making a significant difference. Not only that, but the write speed on this M2 is also faster than I expected. I usually let this run until it settles in and gives consistent scores, and now we could see that the base model 256 gets 1,321 write compared to 2,769 write on the 512 model. That is more than twice as fast for the write speed, and the read speed, which is more important, we have 1,445 for the read on the base and 2,135 on the 512. That is also slightly more than twice as fast, and that's gonna be important for RAM swap. When the system needs extra RAM, it writes to the SSD and then reads from it, and it can definitely impact performance, which we'll take a look at. Now, along with that, slower SSDs can impact transfer speeds and way more than you would imagine. This is our Sabrent 4TB Thunderbolt 3 external SSD. It is nice and quick, not nearly as fast as the 512 model M2 SSD, so the limitation will be the drive, but let's go ahead and see how long it takes to transfer our regular PC test folder. All right guys, the differences are drastic. Our 512 model took 57 seconds to transfer this folder. And go ahead and take a guess down below how long it took the 256 gig model to transfer. I don't think you guys will believe it. That took 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Yes, that is literally more than 6 times longer. Now, if you look at the Blackmagic disk speed test, you would think, okay, it will be twice as long. These are twice as fast on the 512, but no. The difference comes in with the total capacity and how much of the fast write portion you have. With most modern SSDs, they won't write that full speed the whole time. They will slow down, and the 256 gig model will slow down to around 200 megabytes a second once the fast portion is written. Where the 512, it will write faster, and it has a lot more of that fast section that can write to. So here's the differences. They are insane. And now we're gonna start our productivity test, but before that, I wanna let you know that we are giving away a brand new M2 MacBook Air, and I don't care where you are in the world, I will pay for the shipping and I will pay for any taxes or fees that are due. All you have to do is 1, be subscribed to Max Tech, and 2, comment below on our launch week videos. That is from last Friday up until Sunday, July 24th. You can comment once per video, that increases your chances. And then on July 25th, we will be announcing the winner in a video that will be posted. We're gonna do it randomly, so please don't fall for any of the scammers down in the comment section. Report those guys and wait for that video and make sure to comment. Now, starting out here, I wanna just show you guys the activity monitor, because on these fresh systems that have very little background tasks, we just have a couple monitoring apps and then we have Creative Cloud open. Our 8 gig already has 145 megabytes in the swap, meaning it is using the SSD as RAM. Whereas a 16 gig, it is using more, it's using 9.3 gigs, it's caching stuff, but we have no swap used. Now, most people will have background applications open, maybe Slack, Teams, they might have Spotify open, they will have some web browsing tabs open. So when some people go ahead and run benchmarks, they have nothing else open, opened, well, it's not completely fair, especially if they're talking about this SSD issue. So if you're trying to be very lightweight on the RAM, I am using Safari for that purpose, and we're only gonna open up 5 tabs. Let's play MKBHD's excellent review where he does mention some of the issues. We'll open up IGN over here. A lot of these media sites have a lot of photos. They have ads that refresh in the background. So far for this kind of load, I mean, even the base model is super responsive here. And it looks like even for just 5 web browsing tabs, we're running 562 megabytes of swap compared to 0. And now I'm gonna run a render in the latest version of Blender, which supports GPU rendering. Now, the app itself isn't gonna take up a ton of RAM, and this scene does have a lot of detail, but we do need RAM for the graphics to work because it is shared. Remember, both these have 8-core graphics, so it's completely fair. The graphics are maxed out, and Blender is using just over 3 gigs of RAM. And on our base model, we're using 1.3 gigs or so of swap. So it is adding on to having those web browsing tabs open. But even if we didn't have that open, we will still be using swap. So that part doesn't matter much. Whereas on the 16 gigs, we are not using any swap at all. All right, the test is finished, and the 16 gig model took 4 minutes and 59 seconds, 1 second longer than the 8 gig model. So it shows that there, we are not seeing any difference at all, and the 8 gig performed really well. And now I'm running a different project file that was sent to us to test out Blender performance for projects that use a lot of memory. A lot of them don't, but some specific workflows do. And here, even the 16 gig model is using swap. But of course, the 8 gig model has to use a lot more, and we're seeing some big slowdowns. Wow, that's a big difference. 6.6 seconds compared to 37.2 seconds. Now, when you're running this calculation, it requires just over 6 gigs of memory, and you guys see what that does to the base model. Now, I think most projects don't require this, and if you're somebody that does work with projects that need a lot of memory, you're probably gonna go for a 14 or a 16 inch. And now, what about for photo editors? I have Adobe Lightroom Classic opened up right here, and let's go ahead and just jump through some of these images. And right away, you guys are seeing that the 16 gig model with 512 is noticeably snappier. Now, we only have 50 images opened up here. Some of you guys thought it was a lot, but then we have commenters that actually work with photos like I used to all the time, saying they never have only 50 open. There's a photographer that does some great in-depth testing on Macs, and his test has 1,000 photos. So I think that our 50, it's very reasonable. And now let's see if we have any differences in export time between these. All right, wow, the first thing that I notice is that our CPU and GPU are being almost maxed out on our 16 gig model. But then looking at the base one, our GPU is only at 66% and the CPU just above 20. Now, if you're wondering why that is, well, it's because the CPU and graphics can't work any faster because they're limited by their RAM, and more specifically, the swap of the SSDs being so slow. Now, another interesting thing is that both of these are using swap. So if you buy the 16 gig model, you're not gonna get away from that. It's using 3.25 compared to about 6.9 on the 8 gig model. All right, so that 16 gig one just got done. I have 1 minute and 11 seconds here. It might have been done before that. Maybe Angelica will put up the score right here. She'll check the camera. While our 8 gig model here, I mean, how far has it gotten here? It doesn't even look like 25% yet. And keep in mind, we are not using Chrome or 10 tabs. We are using Safari with only 5 tabs. Here's our video there. It's kind of glitching up. The whole system's kind of glitching up here. Let me try scrolling. We're getting some delays. Check our Google Drive. Same thing. That is pretty crazy. This is what we talk about when we say this SSD issue. It's a real world issue. It's not just benchmarks if you're trying to destroy the system. That's not the case. We're exporting 50 images and literally having 5 Safari tabs open here. Just out of curiosity, I'm gonna go ahead and export that again. It's been 3.5 minutes so far, and I just wanna see what the responsiveness will be like when we're exporting. Now, of course, with this one, we are waiting way longer, And even to open up Lightroom again, I clicked it, that was like 5-6 seconds. So while you're waiting, you probably wanna use your machine, but you guys saw how much stuttering we're getting. I click and it only opens many seconds later. All right, and then even switching tabs, they're getting reloaded. This is not a 2022 experience. Now with this one, let's see what our multitasking is like. Look at that. Nothing has to get reloaded. Everything's really quick, no issues at all. And then of course, it did that task in just over 1 minute. So the base model took us 8 minutes and 27 seconds. Nearly 8 times as long using Safari with 5 web browsing tabs. That is crazy. Now, in our previous comparison with the M1s, we actually went up to 25 tabs in multiple apps before we saw big slowdowns. So we basically know that the base model is not for any type of productivity if you also multitask. Now, just running this test without anything else open other than Lightroom, it took 2 minutes and 25 seconds. So either way, the 16 gig 512 is twice as fast, even if you have all the stuff opened up in the background with web browsing, multitasking. That's how much of a difference it is. Now, the base model is still good if you're just web browsing, email, whatever, and you have the cash to spend. But if you care about productivity, I mean, it is a huge letdown. Now, as far as coding, we had people comment and say, what, 5 web browsing tabs? 10 web browsing tabs? I have 30, 40 open. I have all this code open, different GitHub stuff. So let's go ahead and open up some more tabs. So I have 5 more opened up here in Chrome, nothing crazy. And now we are compiling our code with our script. Xcode is not using much RAM at all, but we're still getting swap even on the 16 gig model, which proves that macOS will use swap even if it doesn't have to because we have extra RAM available. So that took 2 minutes compared to 2 minutes and 12 seconds. So not much of a difference in terms of the configs for coding. Now, what about video editing? Well, if you're using Final Cut, you're doing simple 4K short projects with no other productivity apps open, there is very little difference as long as you're not touching the computer during your export. But if you start working on some tougher projects or longer projects, then you start to notice a difference. And of course, if you're multitasking while you're exporting, you're doing that in the background, you want to use your computer, that is where stuff starts to glitch out. Our 5-minute ProRes project took 7 minutes and 14 seconds to export compared to 1 minute and 52 seconds, completely negating the benefit of those ProRes decoders and encoders built into the M2 chip. And then if you're somebody like us and when you're rendering a video, you're multitasking, you're working on thumbnails, we have Photoshop open. Our 16 gig opened up the image pretty much instantly compared to taking 9 seconds on the 8 gig model. Photoshop's glitching up and now our export just failed in Final Cut. The 16 gig model has no issues instantly opening up these different photos for our HDR test that we run. Super smooth, we can go back into Final Cut. I keep running this export because it literally does it so quickly. The system is extremely responsive. We can go ahead and open up all these tabs that are in the background instantly. No issues, let's go into Safari here. Wow, super snappy while we're exporting that. On the base model, my cursor is freezing up. Let's open up our web browser. That was about 6 seconds to open up each one. This is crazy. Let's go into, come on doc. Open up, we're getting beach balls. Let's open up Photoshop here. Try to change through these photos. 1, 1000, 2, 1000, 3, 1000, 4, 5, 6. Okay. That was 8 seconds. I mean, you guys get the point here. Oh, that second export failed again because we were trying to multitask. So you literally just have to leave it. And merging HDR files in Photoshop, man, this is unbearably slow. It took literally 40 seconds on the 16 gig model while we're rendering. And here we're already over 3 minutes and we are still waiting on this system. That is a real world slowdown. And honestly, I have to say that I would not wish this configuration on my enemy that does productivity and that multitasks. Now, with that said, we have to have a reasonable mind. Even though you guys saw this is real world, we're not pushing it insanely. We're seeing such slowdowns. Not everybody is going to do this. This is the MacBook Air, and although people do coding on there, some people play some simple games, some people do video editing. I think this higher end model is gonna be great for video editing. Not everybody's gonna do that. Some people are literally just gonna web browse, Google, maybe Google Drive, some very simple stuff, Slack, just communication. And for them, the base model will do a decent job. Now, I still would say if you can afford spending the extra $200 to get the 512, do so. You're gonna have this laptop for a long time. And for anybody else who does multitask, who does do even occasional hobby level productivity, please get yourself at least the 512 gigabyte model. Some of you guys have asked, well, if I can only choose one, 16 gig or 512, which one would you do? I would say do the 512 because one, you're getting double the storage space. That's gonna help out a lot. And two, even the base M1 MacBook Air that had the 2 NANDs, the faster SSD compared to this release, with the base model, it did a great job, way better than this is doing. So a lot of the slow SSD issues will be fixed with that 512, even if you can't get 16 gigs of RAM. So that would be my priority. All right, looks like this one is almost done here. Bam. All right, guys, that was 7 minutes and 40 seconds in order to do that compared to 40 seconds. You guys let me know your thoughts on this. What are your opinions? Once again, comment below if you guys want to win an M2 MacBook Air. And with that, check out one of those great videos right over there. Click above to subscribe to help us reach our goal of 1 million subscribers. This is Max, and I'll see you in the next video.